So we had a period of growth, and we had primarily non-civilian clients. We had people that we have known for a long time that we worked with, and we got the patent issued in 1998. USPTO, funnily enough, United States Patent and Trademark Office was our largest client, and it was the largest rollout in history at the time of XML. It was 30,000 seats, and that subsequent in our corporate life turned out to be a very useful thing. I'm not going to go in detail about 9/11. It was a transitional period and a transformational period for everybody. It certainly was for our small company. Memorable day for two reasons. One of our employees died in New York. The other reason is that three of our employees were meeting in the Pentagon in Washington talking about how to connect the dots and how to manage data on people where you want to manage the data. So next slide, please. Subsequent to 9/11, approximately 6 months after, eye for eye found we hit some pretty tough times. And we had a great story. We were all excited. We were full of what's a polite way of saying it, energy. and then we had a pretty tough time. And our pipeline just dried up. We've all experienced that before in the venture industry. You think things are going to go great, and then they don't. You just stop. So next slide, please. So we tried to figure out what to do, and it sounds apocryphal, but we unscrewed every second light bulb in the office. I mean, those light bulbs are expensive. I don't know who sells them. They make a lot of money. Must be GE, I guess. They're very long ones. They cost a fortune. And we did whatever we could to save money. Had to walk in the room and basically fire 130 people. Couldn't afford to pay them anything. Did not get sued, by the way. Just told people the truth. And we ended up, instead of trying to address a whole wide range of verticals, we focused on one, which was the pharmaceutical industry, and then ultimately a subcomponent of that, which is labeling. So when you go to the pharmacy, you get a drug, that label is actually quite important. It represents a life cycle of data. It's a contract between you and the pharmaceutical company and the pharmacy itself, and it better be current, because if you mix dynamite and a match and it gets lit, it's not very good. And we're constantly having to innovate to make sure that life cycle is compressed so you get current information. So that's what we had to do. So we went from trying to capture and dominate a host of verticals to one. Okay, the next one, please. And then January 27, 2004, this 11:24 a.m., this is, of course, public because it's part of the public filings. I got an email from Michael Volpe. And, yeah, it's a little bit tech speak in the way it's written, but the guts of it is we thought we had an issue. And it was talking about a patent application that was troubling. And it got the wheels in motion to try and figure out if we could do something about it. Could I have the next one, please? We did. And we sued Microsoft. We went to court in the Eastern District of Texas. We were successful. And this was a really puzzling email because when I got the email...
Not puzzling to me.
In retrospect, it's easy. But at the time, we did not go down to Texas during the trial for a host of reasons I could explain offline. So we were waiting to see what happened. And the jury had gone out. And fortuitously, they had asked for a calculator, lunch, and a blackboard. And so we were waiting and waiting. And then finally, just showing a kind of Canadian-U.S. differential and mentality, what can happen, I got this email, and I was trying to figure out, is it 200,000 or 200 million? And I thought it was 200,000 because it was one M and there's no exclamation mark. So we wrestled for a while, got more and more angry, storming and back and forth. But anyway, we had a happy ending. So in a fairly compressed period of time, we took intellectual property that we believed had value. We executed, we went to the States, and we enforced it. The story's not over. If you can just flip the next slide, please.
It's almost over.
We hope so. I guess it is almost over one way or the other.
Story for today.
Yeah, for today. So that's the verdict. That's what it looks like when you get a $200 million verdict. It ain't that fancy.
Wow.
It's yes, 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 no, 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 200 million, and somebody sat there writing the number. Thank goodness. Next one, please. We got our final judgment. It boosted up to about 300 million because of interest and enhanced damages and certain conduct that had occurred before and during the trial. Next one. It's an amazing group of people. There's Volpe in the Court of Appeals. The fellow in the front we hadn't seen for 15 years. He showed up out of the blue. He's the fellow who wrote the patents. and Bill Cox in the background, who was the corporate designee during the trial. It was an incredible period of time. It was one way of realizing an intellectual property. We hope it'll end happily. Next one, please. And it got a lot of publicity. And I particularly like the I Love XML T-shirt, but all over the world. So you know what? Canadians have a lot of great IP, can't enforce it, can't capitalize on it. It's a great area for the future. And the next one, I think, is the, Conan O'Brien went crazy and put it on his show. And he had this little cartoon where it was Goodbye Cruel World for Microsoft and for Word. So it did get some pretty interesting publicity. Thank you very much to get it done. And next one, I think, is the last one, which is, now we'll see what happens. Microsoft has tried to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. We hope they will not accept it. We don't think it's a meritorious petition. But we do have a few opponents. We had $1.3 trillion in market capitalization put in these briefs against us, and they represent 3 million employees. So we'll see. We're in for a continued battle, but we're in it for the long haul. Thank you.
I'll allow all of you to draw your own conclusions about this fascinating story. I think it should be a movie. Maybe we'll do a movie of all this stuff. Our next speaker is Jane Harvey. She's been a friend of mine for years, or I've been a friend of hers for years, and I've been her great admirer. Jane started off in law and decided to not go the traditional route and did something that was really untraditional, that she would start a range of services at the store level and became the only consumer-oriented multi-location law firm in Toronto, in our great capital. Jane is a graduate of the University of Western Ontario, my university, and the University of Toronto Law School, my university, and started but never finished an MBA, nor did I. And she was elected a member of the governing bodies of Ontario for a 4-year term and served on boards of directors of many institutions. She's a fabulous personality, and here's a woman that created something out of an idea. Jane.
Thank you, Jerry. Well, the first thing I want to ask Loudon is whether he got the money. And I'm suspecting that he didn't get the money because it's under appeal.
Not yet.
Damn. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my business, which unfortunately is not venture cap, so I don't know how germane it really is to you today. It's a very small retail business. But it does provide cheap, good, and fast legal advice 6 days a week throughout the GTA, which is our major market in Canada. How many other communities have this? I think what I'm doing is very good for the economy. We have a preventative orientation. We are helpful to our clients. I'll give you an example. When a small business startup comes in, we insist that they do a shareholders agreement first to make sure that the people actually get along before they're actually in business together. And we actually, and I know this doesn't sound modest, but I think we have actually helped to reduce the amount of litigation in the GTA, at least at the family law level, because we do not promote litigation. And in business, we don't promote litigation. We try to do a deal. Better for the client. Lawyers make less money, but who cares about them? Sorry. Apologies to men and gross. How did it get started? Well, essentially, I copied a U.S. idea. And really, to give an overview of the legal profession, it is still a profession pre-industrial revolution. The legal profession is so far behind other, even professional, other professions, such as, for example, the accounting profession, where they have formed large multinationals. They've gone into other businesses like management consulting. Law firms are still really just providing legal services. They're still highly fragmented. The low end is a lot of individual practitioners. It's not an up-to-date system, and that doesn't augur well going forward for our clients who are businesses and individuals. So what I am addressing is the huge opportunity at the low end of the market in the legal profession. And ultimately, I'm hoping to create a national brand, although in Canada, frankly, when you get outside of the Toronto market, you don't have all that much. You've got BC and Alberta. There are pitfalls in the kind of business I'm in. It's a very low margin business because we don't charge very much. We charge $99 for a will. We charge $3.99 for an incorporation. We charge $1,000 for a shareholders agreement. You get the idea. We don't really make that much money per unit. And also, I have expensive professional staff, and I might add I have excellent professional staff. Of my lawyers, over 50% went to U of T Law School, and they have been practicing for more than 20 years. I'm not going to tell you how I solve the problems of low margins and expensive professional staff, but I have a good workable model, and much of it revolves around motivating people through profit sharing. All of my people are on profit sharing, and essentially they're self-employed business people. I'm just going to tell you briefly how I got started. And these are kind of funny little things. When I was a kid, I moved every 2 years. My dad was in the petroleum industry, so I moved across Canada. And I went to a new school almost every year. And from that, I learned that change is good. And these truths that I'm going to mention are really not part of our popular culture. In our popular culture in Canada today, change is not a good thing, which I've never understood. The second thing I learned as a kid is that the great equalizer for all of us is the fact that we all die. Hence, it doesn't matter how rich you are, how powerful you are, how well connected you are, you're going. And this should actually foster more community among us than it does. I mean, we're all basically here for a short time, but hopefully a good time. And then I learned something when I married my ex-husband, Don Oborn, and that is that you don't need money, you don't need connections, and you don't need education to succeed in business. And this is totally contrary to the culture in this country, which is that, you know, you need more and more post-secondary degrees, you need money, you need connections. This is just not the case. And in fact, with the change in information technology, it's getting to be less true. I think success is even more accessible to people because you don't need to be in a large business organization. You really can start your own and be extremely successful. And then I learned once I started practicing law at a large law firm that it's actually better to be the client than the lawyer because the clients made more money. And all the lawyers were jealous of the clients who were the real movers and shakers. We were just the servers. And then when I worked in-house at Torstars, in-house counsel, I realized that it wasn't likely that I was going to be the CEO of that company, and not because I was so special and the other people there, the other executives, weren't. It's just that there are so many talented people in a large organization, and they're all trying to be CEO. So then I realized that I would like to be my own CEO. And then I also learned something from my ex-husband, and that was that I should go into a business in a line of work that I knew. And so I'd had considerable experience in different aspects of the legal business. I've worked for the government of Ontario in the summers. I'd worked for a large firm. I worked in-house. So I decided to go into the legal business, and I was a member of the American Bar Association. And I must say that none of my other contemporaries thought to join the American Bar Association. So I was in the American Bar Association, I was reading the magazine, and one day I read about Jacoby and MaRS, which some of you may have heard of. It is the firm in the States which really created the storefront legal concept. And at the time I heard about it, they had maybe 10 locations in LA, and it was a very informal thing. There was also a couple of chaps in Vancouver, Canada, who were in the business, but they had one location each.